Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about the Spinergy Rev-X wheels and the danger zone. If you've been around long enough, you'll hear wonderful positive information about these wheels, but you'll also hear stories of these disintegrating while riding. But why? We're here to learn a little bit about that. The Spinergy Rev-X wheels were the icon in the 1990s. I loved mine. On the road at 24 miles per hour, they seemed to essentially disappear underneath you. I've never found anything like that until I came across these generation of borers behind it, which are represented here by the fulcrum labeled Racing Speed XLRs. These also just disappear underneath you above 24 miles per hour. They're wonderful wheels. But back to the Spinergies. I used a tubular version of these Spinergy wheels. Mine also had the rim drilled out for 32 holes to even further lighten them back at the time, make them extra fast, of course, up hills. There's multiple varieties of these, and they also came in multiple colors with multiple types of stickers. But I abruptly sold these after a trip to a famous Italian automaker back in the day, and there's a good reason why. Back in the 90s, I used to work in the automotive industry. I was in charge of IT systems, including CAD, FEA, and CFD at an automotive company. We had an Italian auto company as a client. I also did the translations from English to Italian and back. I was fluent in Italian in a way because automotive terms weren't really in the dictionary and weren't really taught when you learn Italian. But going back now, back in the 97 Tour Italy, I believe it was, a famous Italian sprinter, I think it was Cippolini, broke one of these wheels during sprinting. I don't remember the whole story that was told to me back then, but it either went directly to or through the UCI to this famous Italian car maker. Well, I happened to have gone there for not work but vacation, and I also rode with the local cycling team, which their jerseys back there. And I watched a little bit of Formula One team do their testing there. Got driven around some nice fancy red cars where my eyeballs were the same level as the hub of Audis, fun stuff like that. Of course, I did a bit of traveling to Firenze and other Italian landmarks. Oh, and we had a review of this broken Spinergy Rev-X wheel from, if I recall, the Seiko team. What I found out is between the two halves of the wheel, deep into the V section, there's a round bead of what they said was an outdated type of epoxy, one that did not provide a great adhesion between the layers of carbon fiber and the epoxy in the carbon fiber. Of course, you got to take notice that this is from a top-notch Formula One team whose idea of an ounce of epoxy probably would be $1,000. So that kind of take that with a grain of salt when it comes to economics and what other companies use in their manufacturing. But of course, since the epoxy didn't hold two halves together, they would then drill holes right at these seams here and rivet the two halves together to create additional strength. But back then, if you drilled carbon fiber, you created a tear seam. We take a close look and see these rivets. Here's the front of the rivet here. And then the back of the rivet. That's the back. And the front. But back then, drilling holes through carbon fiber would create a tear seam. And apparently with these rivets, once they started cracking around that tear seam, they simply would splinter and disintegrate. Sounds familiar, huh? If you read the horror stories of these. Anyway, so back in the day, after I got home, I sold my Rev-X's, my road ones, even though I love them. They're so light and so fast. I did keep my 26-inch mountain bike ones and actually ride them to this day without issue, except for the rim scratching with the V-brakes. But there's one story I never heard of how these were tested and analyzed after they were broken in the tour. So be careful. And if you do have these, check around the rivets, see if there's any cracking there at all. If there is, I would not use them. If they're solid, well, now they're how many decades old now? So I'd still be a little bit careful about them. Anyways, I hope that was some positive information for you, some information you can use. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and a big thumbs up if you like the information. I'll see you later.